After making a lot of noise last offseason, it was a lot quieter for the Washington Capitals this year. Dan Holmi of Locked On Capitals will discuss that, the Ovechkin factor, and what lies ahead for the Caps. All that and more on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Gil Martin here. Welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Capitals, Dan Holmi. And Dan, last offseason, I think the Capitals hit a home run. They were very busy, very active, and almost everything they tried worked out. It was a lot more low-key this offseason. Why was that? And talk to me about how you judge these moves that they did make.
Well, now they have new GM Chris Patrick taking over after Brian McClellan was running the ship. In a lot of ways, I think to myself, he knew a change was coming. So that's why he brought in a lot of players last summer. I think that the Capitals were active. I think they were all in on Nikolai Ehlers. They just weren't able to come to terms with the money, that kind of thing. And they also kicked the tires on Jack Roslovic. Now, I think they're pivoting to the youth movement as the Capitals prospects. There's a lot of upside there. And, it's something that's been spoke of for years that there's a lot of young talent. Why not lean into it a little bit more? I think this is the season we're going to see what Ryan Leonard, Andrew Crystal, Ivan Miroshnichenko, these kind of guys, how are they going to look? The problem that I have with it, however, is that if it's not good enough, is Chris Patrick going to have to pick up the phone and be scrambling, trying to trade this player, that player, if it's not going to work? So it'll be interesting to see how the Capitals fare. Do they take a step forward? Do they take a step back? But as we record this in early August, it does appear that the Capitals will lean into more of the youth and hope that the veterans on the team can kind of pick up the slack elsewhere.
You talk about the veterans, obviously the biggest one, Alexander Ovechkin. A lot of speculation that this could be his last season in the NHL. He's 40 now?
He's going to be 40 in September, yes. Yeah.
So what are you hearing, and what impact does that have on how the Capitals approach this season?
Well, I mean, listen, if you're a longtime Capitals fan and, covering the Capitals for Locked On, I hear a lot of viewpoints from different people. It is my belief that this will be his final season. There was an email that went out to the season ticket holders that said this was going to be the final season. And then the PR guys heard it and they reeled that in. Nothing to see here. His wife, Natsia, was on Russian media. She said this was going to be the final season, and then she backpedaled on that. All we have to hang our hat on that there is any kind of extension is the kind of ambiguous comments by Alex Ovechkin himself saying that my mind is not made up yet. Now, listen, I don't think that, you have to read into it too much, that I think that his mind is made up. And I think this is going to be his final season. He passed Wayne Gretzky. He won the Stanley Cup in 2018. It's my belief. What else is there for him left to prove? And at 40 years old, you're only going to see a depreciation over time. That is he going to sign a 1, 2, 3-year deal? That is what's being rumored out there. At 43 years old, what can you expect out of Ovi? And I don't think that he wants to go down in the category of Jaromir Jagr. And I know that 40 is not 50. I get that. But I expect him to, put up big numbers in what could ostensibly be his final season. But if you're asking me right now, I would put all my chips in on this being Alex Ovechkin's last season in the NHL.
How does that change the way the Capitals approach this season?
Well, it is interesting that you bring that up, is that they, have drafted well, the last few years here. Lyndon Lakovic, I'm talking Ryan Leonard, Andrew Crystal, that I talk about this on the show if you're an everydayer of Locked On Capitals, that as good as the Capitals are now, they're going to be even that much better in years to come just based on prospects. So what I think is going to have happen, of course, is that Tom Wilson is going to be the next captain. There's no real mystery there. And I think this team is built in a way that they can win minus Alex Ovechkin, if you can believe that, because you saw the injury that he faced when he got injured against the Utah Hockey Club at that time, missed some games, and the Capitals found a way to win without him. Now, listen, he revolutionized hockey in Washington. There is no doubt. He is going to be a Hall of Famer. There is no doubt. But at some point, you have to be willing to turn the page. I've come to terms with it as a person that's been a fan of this team for so many years. But I think that the Capitals do have the needed depth in-house. And, one of the things that Patrick talked about is we'll see how this goes. We can always make some big moves at the trade deadline in the spring if the belief is this Capitals team is on the cusp of making it to the playoffs.
Talk to me about Andrew Crystalall. It seems like management is very high on him as a prospect. What are his skills and how far away is he from possibly making the big club?
One of the last players cut last season. There was not the option for him at that time to go to the AHL Hershey Bears. So he was reassigned to the Kelowna Rockets. Then he was traded out to the Spokane Chiefs and killed it. Record numbers. Worked on the things that needed to be worked on. His skating, he worked on, and some things that he can't work on. His height, we can only work on what we can work on. But he bulked up, and the belief is that he was, or the thought when observed was that he was getting pushed off the puck too easy. So he's bulked up a little bit. I think he could be a real contender for that second line left wing. Another intriguing storyline, if Connor McMichael moves to that third line center position, that position that gave the Capitals quite a bit of grief last season.
What are your biggest concerns right now as the season, training camp is roughly 6 weeks away?
The biggest things that I'm concerned about are, leaning into that youth, that on paper, these players could be good, but you don't know. It's, when we looked at Ryan Leonard last year, put up back-to-back 30-goal seasons for Boston College. And the feeling out there was that at the end of the season, he's going to join the Capitals. And he only put up one empty netter. So I think it's important to limit expectations. It's not always a shot straight to the moon. That I am concerned about the inexperience and the fact that Chris Patrick did not go out and make any bigger moves, an elite goal scorer, because make no mistake about it, the Capitals would be in a much better position now had they signed Nikolai Ehlers or a player, someone like that. So I'm cautiously optimistic that, like we spoke about Crystal, who put up big numbers for Kelowna and the Spokane Chiefs. You take a look at Crystal, Miroshnichenko, that it's going to be their time to shine. And don't blow it, kids. This is your opportunity. One of the knocks against the Capitals for years is the reluctance that they wanted to squeeze as much juice out of that veteran core, kind of like what the Pittsburgh Penguins have done and are now in a real mess, that I think the Capitals were proactive and, great players around them. Like you spoke about, the moves that were made last summer. Pierre-Luc Dubois, had a breakout season. And just everyone last year that put up career numbers, that I'm feeling optimistic, big picture, but cautiously optimistic on the youth players that will be added to the team in the fall.
If there's a move, what do you think they would be looking to add between now and opening night?
A top six scoring forward, right? A proven commodity, the Nikolai Ehlers-esque type of move. And the problem is, and I'm not going to call it a problem, it is kind of a problem, is that they don't want to move any prospects. They don't want to move anything like that because the Capitals have had issues with that in the past, being in the win now mode, that we want this big shiny toy, so we're just going to deplete the farm to get that. So, but what happens? You play that out a couple of years, your prospects are depleted. So I think that the Capitals did want to make a big moves. I think they were all in on a Nikolai Ehlers. It's just they didn't want to have to give up a Leonard, a Crystal, something like that. So they're all in. Fingers crossed, toes crossed that 25-26 will be a good season for the Capitals.
All right, Dan, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps, of course, available on Amazon, Fire TV channels, and YouTube, and wherever you find your podcasts.
All right, Dan, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? Well, with Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You could track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. And I know that if you're trying to keep an account with your wife, your husband, your significant other, it makes it so much easier to have all this information in one place with Monarch Money. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year.